Howdy everyone, and blasting onto the scene today is an exciting new standard zoom lens from Sony, their FE 20 to 70mm f4G. It's a full frame zoom lens with the cojones to zoom out as wide as 20mm, which makes me want to pirouette with joy because I love 20mm as a focal length. It's so dramatically wide while still being quite easy to shoot with, and this super wide angle is particularly useful for video makers shooting blogs or using digital image stabilization, which tends to crop your image a bit. And being able to zoom into 70mm from there is just the icing on the cake, really. This is probably my dream lens for taking on vacation or just for general video work. The only downside of this lens, its very high asking price of well over $1,000. Ouch. And also, you have to ask yourself, how could Sony possibly offer good image quality in a lens of these extreme parameters? Every extra millimeter of wide angle is a huge challenge to the manufacturer of any standard zoom lens. Well, we will see about image quality in just a minute. I'd like to thank Sony UK for getting an early production copy of this exciting lens to me for testing, although as usual, this is a totally independent review. The build quality is on par for a nice Sony G lens. It's not too big or heavy, making a lot of use of plastics in its body, and its aesthetic design is understated but pleasant. The lens has a good amount of weather sealing, including a rubber gasket around the rear mount. Video makers will be pleased to see an aperture ring that can be set to either click at every third of an f-stop or turn completely smoothly, and also it can be locked in and out of the automatic position with another switch on the side. Next comes the rubberized zoom ring, which turns smoothly and evenly without any stickiness, although bear in mind that my copy of the lens was obviously brand new. I can't vouch for how it would work after years of use. In front of that come the almost ubiquitous focus hold buttons and an auto manual focus switch. Then comes a rubberized manual focus ring, which turns smoothly and lightly and works very responsively with the focus motor, and linear focusing is available with this lens also for video makers. The lens displays just a little focus breathing at 70mm, zooming out just a little as you focus more closely. At wider focal lengths it's a bit more noticeable, but it's never a serious issue. Even on a slightly older camera body like my A7R III, the autofocus motor is silent, accurate, and incredibly quick and confident whether you're shooting in autofocus single or continuous modes. 10 out of 10 here. The lens comes with a plastic hood of a reasonable size considering its widest possible field of view. Its filter thread size is 72mm wide, and it does not have its own image stabilization built in, although virtually all Sony cameras have it built into them nowadays, so it's not really a problem. Overall, the lens combines a nice hand-holdable size and weight with excellent functionality and electronics, particularly for video work. What more could you possibly want? Alright, let's move on and take a look at image quality. I'll start by testing the lens with my standard 42MP Sony A7R III camera with in-camera corrections turned on. At that lovely wide angle of 20mm and f4, image quality in the middle is ridiculously sharp with excellent contrast. Image corners are a bit softer, but still pretty good, surprisingly. I was expecting to encounter serious problems there. Stop down to f5.6 or f8 for small improvements that lead to excellent corner image quality. Well, let's zoom into a more conventional wide angle of 35mm. At f4, again, image quality is razor sharp in the middle. Corners, again, looking a little softer but still very good. Again, f5.6 and f8 see improvements that lead to excellent image quality. Finally, let's zoom all the way into 70mm. At f4, again, we see perfect images right away in the middle. This time, corner image quality is very sharp straight from f4, although if you like, you can stop down to f5.6 for even more resolution and brightness there. The lens stays this sharp all the way down to f16, where a little softness does begin to emerge due to diffraction. Overall though, even on a very high resolution Sony A7R III camera, the lens is a consistent and generally pretty great performer. Its 20mm image corners aren't quite the sharpest in the world, but that's hardly surprising considering the lens's cutting-edge zoom range, and every other setting looks absolutely fabulous, so really, these are some pretty delightful results for what is a somewhat groundbreaking lens. I'd have no hesitation using this for any professional work, and it's more than good enough for 4K or even 8K video making. Now then, that 20 to 70mm zoom range means that this lens might also be of serious interest to APS-C camera shooters, so I'm also going to test it on my little Sony A5100 camera with its 24MP sensor. At 20mm and f4, picture quality continues to be razor sharp in the middle of the image. Corner image quality is a bit softer though. But wait, all you have to do now is to stop down to f5.6 for excellent quality to re-emerge from corner to corner. f8 looks excellent too, although at f11 we begin to see a little softness due to diffraction. Let's zoom in again to 35mm. At f4 it's the same story, incredible sharpness in the middle, but a little softness in the corners. Stop down to f5.6 or f8 to see nice improvements there though. Finally, let's zoom all the way into 70mm. At f4 this time, not only do we see razor sharpness in the middle, but we also get it straight away in the corners. Very nice. Again, the lens stays this sharp down to f11. So it's not a perfect performance here on an APS-C camera, but certainly a very good one considering the zoom range. Again, I'd have no hesitation using this lens for 4K video making on APS-C, and then with a lens like this, you'd always be ready to upgrade to full frame if you wanted to. Alright, let's turn off in-camera corrections and take a look at vignetting and distortion by shooting some RAW files. At 20mm there's an obvious issue with barrel distortion, which was exactly what I was expecting frankly, and those corners look very dark too. Stop down to f5.6 or f8 and the corners brighten up quite a lot, but still there are serious issues here if you don't shoot with in-camera corrections. Zoom in to 31mm and that distortion straightens out. At 70mm we see fairly strong pincushion distortion here, although vignetting isn't quite as bad as at wider angles. Stop down to f5.6 or f8 and those corners brighten pretty quickly, so really you'll want to keep in-camera corrections turned firmly on with this lens. Now let's take a look at close-up image quality, and this is where the lens has a real ace up its sleeve. Its macro performance means it can get you very close to smaller subjects. Just look. At f4, close-up image quality is not as sharp as before, but still fairly good. f5.6 looks about the same, but f8 and f11 are very sharp here, so that's a great macro capability as a bonus feature. Okay, let's see how the lens performs against bright light. We're seeing quite a number of very small flaring artifacts here when zoomed out at the widest angle, and some broader flaring when you're zoomed in. Overall, an average performance for a standard zoom lens here. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look at chroma smearing. There's more good news. Bright points of light in image corners see no real smearing at all here. Well, let's zoom out now and look for sun stars. Stop down as far as f11 and they begin to emerge. At f16 and f22 they get just a little stronger. Now let's take a look at the quality of this lens's bokeh. While an f4 standard zoom lens shouldn't be your first choice for portrait photography, still, zoom into your subject and out-of-focus backgrounds will be your reward here. Those backgrounds look beautifully soft in virtually all situations, whether you're zoomed in or zoomed out. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. Sony's lenses for mirrorless cameras often struggle here, but there's even more good news. At f4, very little colour fringing on bokeh highlights is visible at all, so it's not a real problem. Overall, well, can I be honest? When I first received the lens, I felt a certain cynical curiosity. How could it possibly perform well at 20mm and still make room for the rest of that zoom range? And how could it possibly justify its enormous price? But the designers of this lens clearly shared my ultimate view that cynicism is the enemy of anyone who wants to get anything done in the world, and they actually pulled it out of the bag and knocked this lens out of the park. It really is excellent and a pleasure to work with, especially for people like me, wide-angle enthusiasts who also do a lot of video work. If I had a bit more money, then this would definitely be my choice for a go-to video lens for any Sony full-frame camera I happen to be using, and it's a nice option for APS-C cameras too. So, Sony, llongyfarchiadau i chi. congratulations for producing a slightly revolutionary new zoom lens and definitely not screwing it up. If you can afford it, it comes highly recommended. Oh, you know what? Let me tell you a secret. With interesting new lenses coming out like this all the time, my work never really gets boring as a lens reviewer. This is good fun still, even after 10 years or so. Thanks for watching. I hope you find these videos interesting and helpful. If you do, then of course, as usual, check out my Patreon page down in the description below, where supporters of this channel get all kinds of exclusive bonus content, which I really enjoy putting together for them. Ciao for now.